we go. This is the Y-Wing build video commentary track. Some of you have said you love to hear my my mellifluous voice as I speak, and so I'm doing this to show how shit happens. So I initially did a time-lapse photography thing, which I thought would be easier and would look better than doing video and then putting video together and things like that. It turns out that so time-lapse gives less information because it's only taking a picture every X number of seconds. I think I had it set to take a picture every 5 seconds. It still ended up making a file that was like, huge. It was like 40 gigs or something, and then it basically made a 3-minute video that was 8K. It was really hard to manage. It just took a long time for my computer to turn that into video, and then turn that into a video that I could then turn into a video that went on YouTube. And then ended up making like 2.5 minutes of like not showing off any of the key moments because it was just flashing by so fast. And so I decided to do video instead. So here so the first video was just me assembling the model and putting on decals. I decided we're not painting this. This is already cast in various colors, so I wasn't going to paint it. So I just decided to, like, in fact, the yellow stripe that's on the main hull and the cockpit, and some of the engine parts are a different color, cast in different colors, and so went with it. So I decided that all of the color in this kit would pretty much come from first panel lining, which is what I'm doing here. So this is it's a product by Tamiya called Tamiya Panel Line Accent Colors, and so I'm using black and brown. I did one at the beginning of this video. You could see I was brushing all over the model, and you couldn't see it because it was the light gray. And I guess I thought this model was cast in white, but I think it's cast in gray, or very light gray. So light gray just was invisible. So I'm just going over it with the black. You could argue that normally panel liner is something you apply with a very thin brush, and you just kind of like hit the cracks in the model, and then it just kind of like crawls into the cracks, and it's beautiful, and you can easily clean it up. I felt for the Y-Wing, you just got to get in there and just really slather the panel liner in, and then you remove. Once you're done with that, you then remove all the high points with either a brush or a sponge that has paint thinner in it. So I'm still doing all of the panel lining. Now, you notice that at the ship is resting on the engine pods. And the hull, and it keeps falling upside down on the cockpit that I had glued in an open position. And actually, you couldn't see it in the time-lapse video, but I cut the cockpit into 3 pieces to have the open cockpit. This model comes with a version of the open cockpit in glass, but I didn't want to have to paint the glass or mask, the glass and then paint it and do all that. So I just went with the classic Star Wars of no glass in the canopies. Like that's classically in the original trilogy. All of the models had no glass in their canopies. I guess so they could film it and not have reflections of the green screen or the blue screen and the lights and stuff in the glass. So they had no glass in their canopies, and so I'm continuing that tradition. So the canopy's there, but there's no glass in it, so it's like super clean. You can't see the glass. Anyway, so I think it's already fallen off. Yeah, there it is, lying next to the model. The canopy that was sort of glued in the open position. Oh, it's still there. Okay. No, the back came up. So one thing here we go. One thing I noticed with doing the panel lining is it's got solvent in it because it melted the glue. I'm using Tamiya extra thin cement. This is technically a snap together kit. I wouldn't do this as a snap together kit. A lot of those thin pipes just wouldn't stay in if you just used the snap togetherness of it, and so I just used Tamiya thin cement to lock them in. I didn't use enough cement. Plastic model cement usually melts the pieces together and makes them permanent. I didn't use enough. So here's the cockpit coming off. I just took it off. I didn't use enough to really bond it in that way, and so like as soon as I put on the liquid panel liner, I'm using the brown to make it look a little rusty, on the cockpit, it just fell right off, so that's fine. But I'm noticing now that as I sort of aggressively brush the panel liner into the model, I'm breaking some of the little pipes. They're very thin. Like, this model is amazingly detailed for a snap together. I wouldn't say it's a low level of skill required, compared to like the X-Wing, which is an easier one. This is definitely up there. Maybe not as hard to put together as the Millennium Falcon, the 1/144th scale Millennium Falcon. That one's got a lot of work to do as well, with little pipes and little things. But I mean, this thing is like, it's like Galaxy Truckers. It's a plumber's nightmare. It's just full of pipes. Anyway, so as I was resting the thing on the back, those vanes in the back, they started snapping off right where the brush is now. And so I had to re-glue them, and it's an ongoing process. Here I'm using a brush dipped in solvent, and it's just basically turpentine to remove some of the high points. And I'm finding that's not working great. That works better when the panel liner is dry. So instead, I think I'm going to switch. Am I switching yet? I'm doing this voiceover after the fact, obviously, and I'm running this video at 1.7 speed or something like that, because the video is already very long, and so I'm doing extra fast. You notice the camera's kind of shaking because this is my leg. My leg shakes whenever I'm doing stuff, and the camera's on I'm in a room where the floor is kind of shaky, so the whole rig is just shaking. So I hope that's okay with you guys. As I lean in, it doesn't shake as much. It's okay. So here I'm using a sponge with thinner to just remove the high points of the. And this is pretty magical. As you're doing, like, wow, it just removes all the high points and just leaves like the thinner or the panel liner in the cracks. It's very nice. Kind of like it. This is pretty much where I broke all of the things that I broke on the model. Also a challenge filming this with like getting my slightly balding pimply forehead in the way, but you know how it is. What else came off the model? You notice I'm building the model with the left engine cone off. I'm building this as part of a diorama that's going to have ground crew working on the ship and all that stuff. Alright, see here, so this is the next day now. I waited a day, the panel liner dried, and I think it looks pretty good, but now you can really wipe it down well with a sponge or Q-tips with thinner to get right in the cracks and just remove a lot of the splash of the panel liner. I feel like I centered the camera a little better on this one, so hopefully there'll be less video of my hands and head. And so here I'm using like a cotton swab. I'm just going to go into the cracks and just kind of really clean it up. The final result of this is pretty nice. And then wait until you see, oh, there's my pimply forehead. Wait until you see the next stage after this. Don't want to spoil it, but I get in there with the oil paints. And oil paints are like a discovery that I've made with a lot of these modelers that I follow on YouTube, like Plasmo, and oil paint's pretty amazing. The only drawback is that it takes a couple of days to dry, so you have to take your time. Alright, so as I continue doing the Q-tip work here and getting in between the pipes and all that, it cleans up really nice, and it's just going to look really good. I think can you tell that there's a break in the recording? Before I was talking about doing oil paints. You're going to see that in the next video, but in this case I'm just going to go around the model and clean up all of the black panel liner. Once I'm done all of this, do a quick coat of a glossy lacquer varnish, so that I can then go with the oil paint on top of that. And then whenever I remove the oil paint with the turpentine, with the paint thinner, it doesn't remove the varnish, so it protects this coat that's underneath. Each time you do a coat of, the model liner or the oil paints or anything that you want to do, you always want to have a layer of the lacquer-based varnish, which is glossy. Same thing, I did that after the decals as well, so the decals will be protected. Don't really like the decals that are inside the cockpit. I may rip them off and just paint the control panels. They're just the plastic of the decals is very thick and really resisted the decal softener that I used, which normally forces the decal to like mold against the bumpy surface. Like the control panels are very bumpy. And I guess I was in a rush when I built it. I should have like sanded them down, the control panels, so that the decals would sit better, since all of the controls and dials and buttons and things are in the decal. You live and you learn. So here I'm doing the underside. This is where a lot of the damage is being done to the pipes that are breaking and cracking. Yeah, and I'm looking forward to making the diorama. I'm going to use a lot of found parts. I have like an Airfix kit. I think you saw that in the original video. An Airfix kit of World War II. Oh, great, nice. My other computer's going bling bling. Airfix kit of World War II ground crew, American ground crew, and pilots and stuff. And I also bought some resin Rebel Alliance ground crew and pilots. So they're going to be mixed in. It's going to be sort of a hangar scene of the Y-Wing, and I'm going to have some other Alliance ships parked in there. I'm going to go ahead and build those as well, so that's going to be cool. It's going to be a little diorama of the old hangar bay with the engine cover off and pipes and whatever, doing repair work on the ship. Noticing on the left side of the frame there's the little veins from the back end of the engine just came right out. As soon as the panel liner went in, it dissolved the glue and this just fell out. Yeah, so I'm just going over all of this. See, this is as I'm rubbing the veins, they're just snapping off at the back. So you live and you learn. That's just how it is. I'm going to go in after all of this weathering is done as well. I'm going to do some chipping. Chipping is when you use like a broken piece of sponge, the kind of sponge that miniatures come in, sort of like very open cell sponge. And I'm going to just like sponge on some like little dabs of black or dark brown paint, which will make it look like this paint is chipped off. Especially on the front, the engine cones. You see those in the models. It looks really cool. And also along the edge of the hull. And maybe some blaster damage, to show that the ship's been in use. I guess when the original film came out, the Y-Wings were supposed to be kind of like the Hurricanes, and the X-Wings were supposed to be kind of like the Spitfires. But then by the time you get to Return of the Jedi, when you have your A-Wings and your B-Wings, all of these comparisons kind of fall apart, and you wonder if the X-Wing is like the F-14 or the sort of a semi-1970s multi-role fighter plane. Your Y-Wings are kind of like your A-10s or your Panega Tornadoes, sort of this ground attack, slow. If you ever played X-Wing versus TIE Fighter, the Y-Wing is definitely not a dogfighter like the X-Wing is. It can take a hit, but it just doesn't have the firepower or the maneuverability to take on the TIE Fighters. And then it came out with the A-Wing, which was like the super fast, almost like the F-16, I guess, like a really fast little interceptor, like F-104 starfighter maybe. The only thing is they don't have any single-engine fighters in the Rebel Alliance, so and then the B-Wing is like what, just a huge, big, heavy bomber. Anyway, and then of course you have all your Empire ones, which are the TIE Fighter, and then Empire Strikes Back they introduced the TIE Bomber, and then of course you have the TIE Advance, which is Darth Vader's TIE Fighter. Here I'm doing the cockpit lid. I find that the bluish gray they cast this in didn't look great until the weathering was done, so it looks good with the weather. Anyway, yeah, so TIE Fighters, and then by Return of the Jedi you had your TIE Interceptor, which was the one with the 4 guns and the angled wing panels. Anyway, a lot to say. Stay tuned for the next one, which is going to be me doing the oil. It's already looking pretty good, but with the oil it looks really good. And the oil is just really easy to work with compared to the panel liner. So you'll see. Stay tuned for the next one. Thanks a lot.